when you do the screen share, there is the option for sharing also
Right.
the audio.
Oops. There we go.
I think it's
The milkman, the paper boy, evening TV. You miss your old familiar friends, waiting just around the bend. Everywhere you look, there's a heart. I hear the hold on to. Everywhere you look, everywhere you look, of somebody who needs you. When you're lost out there and you're all alone, a light is waiting to carry you home. Everywhere you look.
So the project was obviously about changing the way that architecture education will put its social media post series. So I decided to try to recreate famous intros to various sitcoms. So that being Full House, and then I did another one with The Office. Um, so here's The Office. Okay, so that's fun. So some of my other work involves uh, media as a means of communication and language, and how the emoji can actually begin to express emotion in through text, and how the image of social media or social media posts could actually become the site for architecture. This is the background of a kind of social media picnic that I placed an object as part of a writing piece I did for Wash Journal, which was the School of Architecture at Taliesin's journal. This, of course, is just a plate of food. Um, and in any case, this also led me to doing a meme page, which I think is how maybe you found me. And the idea was to begin disseminating memes about architecture on social media uh, as as a means to create new discourse about architecture, new ways of thinking about architecture, new categories outside of categories of thinking about architecture that are sort of outside of the normative ways of thinking about it, because maybe it's too stuck in academia, or takes itself too seriously, as my critique. Um, I tend to bag on Bjarke Ingels a lot. Um, and in any case, my with the last project, I wanted to keep this quick, but the last thing I'll kind of talk about um, is the newfound relationship I've been trying to create with architecture and video games, and I think that um, gaming itself is a kind of like architecture's maybe at its best when it's providing a model for a possible future, right? And using that model to either critique our current, our current situation, or using that model to be projective as to what life could be like, or create new models of living, etc. So I think that gaming actually gives us the ability to create um, speculative worlds, and through by seeing ourself as the character, or ourself inside the game, and coupling with the environment of the game, even things like the menu and the sound and the music, they all create a kind of speculative world. And the architectural thinking is what is how architecture operates as a speculation and a critique, and people can take those ideas and look at their current world in a different way. And I think that's the strength of architecture and the strength of video games. And I think we can we can begin as architects. Like, architecture is really interested in digital space, but maybe just using digital tools to create novel forms, instead of thinking about digital space as a from a cultural aspect. And like, there have been generations that have grown up in digital spaces, right? Like, digital space and physical space kind of silly distinctions in my mind, and the space of video games as a kind of cultural shelter is really strong, and I think it's important that we as architects start dealing with this stuff. So anyway, I do architecture reviews of video games on YouTube, and I've got more to come. So you've seen some of my earlier takeover, so I will leave that. And thank you so much for having me in this conversation.
80 side graphics that you used at the end, fantastic. Maybe Alessio, you can keep on going with the presentation. Alessio?
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. I'm gonna share my screen, so I need the permission. Okay. Just work this out. A lot of windows going on. Okay, so I'm about to share the screen. Can you guys see correctly the screen? Okay, so first of all, like Ryan said, like, thank you so much for having me here. It's a great honor for me to have the possibility to present my work to all of this in this sort of connection between Triennale and Tbilisi. I think it's a great idea, and I want to just congratulate all of the guys of Abnormal Story for the great work that they did for putting this together. And then about my work, let's say if someone knows a little bit about my previous work, I've been, let's say, entering officially in the video game field through my thesis at SciArc 2 years ago. I've been always passionate about media and video games also before, but let's say that I have a chance to probably do my biggest personal project during academia when I did my thesis. And so my project was named Games of Deletion and was in collaboration with Runze. It was a classmate of mine at SciArc. And we made an augmented reality concept game that then it became a real prototype, which was was kind of making an hypothesis on the use of augmented reality in the urban space and having like a reason why augmented reality should be so important in architecture. And our main idea, it was just creating this sort of portals that would connect one location to another one, and you had the possibility to just extract the blocks in between the two spaces, and let's say morph the space, distort the space, and have like a real visual connection between two different locations. That was the main goal. And I think we framed our discussion more on the fact that augmented reality can be really a new layer of information on the real built environment, but also can be a chance to expand our current network of connections that we have with smartphones, internet, and video calls and everything. So that's what we worked on in that direction. After that, I have to say, if you guys know like augmented reality, I bet most of you know it because augmented reality filters. Augmented reality filters took over. We are using it now. Ryan gave me a very good tutorial previously this call for the Snap Studio face filter for Zoom. And my work also involved a lot of AR filters in the last year, especially. So starting from Spark AR Studio, and then like really trying to find my way to build filter in Unity, so like natively. And one of the last one I've been building involves a little bit of research in terms of music. So how to convert music into space, basically, and kind of emphasize or leverage your skills as a designer and architect, right? So here, what I'm doing, I'm using something called algorithmic bit mapping. That is a research by giant scam industry that is a video game company. That basically what they did, they created an algorithm for doing these performances on stages for musicians, and like they evaluate like briefly they evaluate like a lot of frequencies in a song, and they just decide what are the frequencies that should be giving you a go for the effect to be happening. So I thought that was a great chance for me to build a filter out of this, let's say, mechanism that works based on states. And so here it's my effort to just translate that into an AR filter. And like basically every effect is played according a part of the song, and it really matches how the song could be playing and all of those things. And this happens with this condition that is actually a collision between these particles that you see, these kind of red spheres, and this kind of wall. So I have to say, if you ever played Beat Saber in virtual reality, or you know what it is, but like there is a lot of spatial condition to analyze when it comes to face filters or any effect that you want to trigger based on pose and detection and anything else. Then going on, like I don't want to explain it too technically, but like what happens here is that every effect is like trigger on when a value is being changing in the filter, and that really like it's like a wall condition, it's like a spatial condition into the environment of Unity, and it really leaves room for new interpretation and what this could be evolving. Meanwhile, the last project I'm going to just show briefly is like a video game I've been working on lately with a game artist from Lebanon that is a student of Sire. His name is Andrea Takaya, and he's a game designer that had a mission to bring, let's say, a message from like the sufferance that the Lebanon is passing as a state, and there are all of these problematics included in the game, but in a very artistic key. And if you want to find more information on his website, there is really more about the game. But what I've been occupying here has been like the work of programming the game to make it happen, basically, and to create all of the states of the game, like how it works and what's the structure, how all of those things combine together and needs to be organized digitally. And even here, I see a lot of connection with the work of designers and architects, because you are organizing digital space, you are creating conditions, you are linking, and it's basically really a work of organization together with some artistic skills. And this is a beautiful work. It's I'm very happy about what we came up with. Also, he's a very talented game designer, and he had like beautiful visuals and cinematic connection. This was a little bit of the behind the scenes. We went through a lot of concept images. So we start really like looking at the references that we wanted to include inside of the game. He had some ideas, I had some, we kind of put them together. It was a very great collaboration. And then we start to manage the fact that we have like different scenes, different levels, where is going the audio, where is going the manager script that handle all of this condition that the player is absorbing through the game. And then we came up with a sort of prototype that then he used for substituting all of the environment in better environment, right? Like in better 3D modeled environment. Here, there is some of the organization of the game. Right now, I don't have a lot of time to explain. This is just an intro, but if someone is more interested in seeing how the game works on my website, there is a lot of information regarding the technicality of the game. And to end, I just want to finish with a different project that is called Friendship AI. And it's a bit of, I can say, an interest of mine. I can say that artificial intelligence now is taking over, especially in video games. Video games has always been featuring AI companions for the main player or for whoever is part of the game. And it's always becoming more realistic, right? The interaction that you have in video game. And that is thanks to the way right now these algorithms of communication are built. They are becoming more and more smart, and because they have the possibility to to adopt like certain techniques for gathering more data fast, like quickly. So here my investigation was in using a service that is available to everyone and is very easy to use. It's called IBM Watson and allows you to let's say introduce your intent or entities that are just chunk of knowledge that you are feeding to your AI assistant, basically. And when you do that in Unity, you can create a loop for letting it learn always more through the game. And this project was just a pitch for a VR game, and but like it really leaves room for a lot of interpretation and further developments. It's always like followed by beautiful graphics, and it really comes with a very big graphic effort. Otherwise, it wouldn't have the same meaning, even if you explain all of those technicality. But like briefly, you are in this environment. It is a very close environment and you don't know why, and you find yourself meeting this very basic robot that it doesn't know anything but the fact that it's just right there with you, and you need to feed it with your knowledge, information, and every time a word is being detected, he's gonna activate, enable a chunk of memory that he has inside of him, but it's disabled and it's locked at the moment. So you're gonna be saying the right thing. He can actually communicate better with you through advancing the game. And this is really just a very quick intro about my work. I hope I didn't take too much time. If anyone is interested in seeing more on my website, there is a lot of more stuff. And thanks again for having me here with a great researcher like Brian and Stefano. Thank you, everyone.
Yes, thank you, Alessio, and please, Alessio and basically his website, the amazing job. So now Stefano is going to present. Davide, you. Yes, great, thank you.
My mask. Now, thank you. Now, Stefano, and together with Luca and Eugenio, we are Parasite 2.0. We are a studio of design. We investigate the status of human life and the habitat of human in general inside the world of art, visual art, architecture, and so temporary printers, project installations. So when normal asks us to have a reflection, I'm not going to present probably our work, but I want to propose to you some points of discussion. And Luigi, thank you for inviting us to our call. And Luigi proposed to us to have a reflection between the world of gaming and the world of architecture. The first thing that we think that is starting from something that I think everyone know that because in the beginning and the end of the century, gaming is become not a neglected part of our society, and so we think that. In general, gaming it becomes a light part as another part of our life, of our environment. That needs to have we need to have a reflection. But the question is why a lot of this amount of people try to escape. I think is the right word. To say why we are looking for this kind of new world, new reality, or new habitat. This is a project that game designer Jack McGonigal used for explaining exactly this. It is of Philip Tolen. He realized a strong picture of gaming, of gamers during their epic win moments when they are incredibly happy because something happened in the game, when they arrive at a particular achievement. And this, I think, is kind of what we're looking for. Something we really miss in the reality. And so, in general, something that we can miss and which kind of environment we are looking for. And starting from the beginning of, digital era, here I came with one of the first projects of Biennial. It's called My Boyfriend Came Back to the War. That in 1996, led this HDL project with narrating a story with a single hyperlink. It seems it's like an infrastructure that permits to the user, in this case the player, to have an experience of the story. But more recently, we have a different way to build the infrastructure, to build the environment for this community that grows in these years. We can start from one of the project realized between the internet, or in general in this case in gaming. And here we have a project of DICHO that builds an environment of this art community of project by Pintos Planetas. Digital artist, one of the most famous artists. And what is the synergy between something between architecture and gaming? It seems a sort that confidence in Babylon is possible, it's becoming I mean that some vision, as for example I said before, some vision becomes available and playable. In general, what is interesting is that in this sort of digital desert, we find some oases around our border, around our rooms, where a community will grow. But this is not I don't know, everyone must know that there is a rule, but the modality how if you go to the business space, it becomes like in general, like in the world in the space. This is the heat map of the most important site in the world. And this is important because at the end, this kind of community needs particular spaces. This is Los Angeles of GTA. This is the same map that they work, but so, in general, the gaming world becomes like more real. Real, I mean, you live the gaming environment as like little life. Especially, we have tools of this community that use like, Discord, the conference, the gamers, the other groups. Not probably things that permits people to talk, but there are probably tools of another community or a lot of communities. Especially in this situation. But here on Discord, you read the number of shared screen at the same time from 10 to 50. Imagine that's how it becomes so important to take tools of these communities nowadays. And also spaces, because what does it mean if we use game tools, game tools? It means that our world becomes our environment. We need to set our environment. If we recognize the word of game, maybe not, because maybe we lose a point from the gaming world. Because games, in general, video games and games, every common concepts, the concept of play. Play is really important. It's really important in this environment. Here, in the game is one of the best definition of play. Right in the 1994 to memorize and find the free activity instead of outside of the life. We build material interest and therefore the reason for having this concept, there's another concept of another Oxford mathematics that in 1991 wrote this book about standard determinism. In general, that the concept itself is if you want to change the world, you need to find a temporary situation within temporary action that is so really defined in the rules. And in general, we need to disappear in order to not escalate in normality. What game design to every game? And we have to realize this sort of doubts, and we realize a lot of these doubts. We have to go back to the concept of play. So this is one of the interesting for us. In a sort of way, game design is this kind of try to merge together spaces and interactions of architecture and sometimes a narrative. This was a kind of characteristic that in an actual architecture, but it's something we use this part in architecture. This, for example, is simple person. This is a particular example of how web design can like an experiment of distribution of the parts, or characters, or a position to have a file for saving, or in general to arrive to the end of this. And the love is like a symmetry between architecture about this. This is one of reference that can be a lot. But in this case, you have an architecture. We choose this because it's pretty similar to the scheme before. How you can go inside this architecture. In this case, in the board, you can go inside with a data at the hand on this stream of our data. And so this arrives a sort of a problem that architecture figured out. Sorry. I'm finishing. And so here, you hear me? Now I'm lying. No, and so here there's another problem. Probably that Hakim Bey told to us in the world in general of matrix and of habitat. Here we are living in the same problem of appropriation in general, say main market. This is Final Fantasy 7 and Far Cry. And then in general we have this huge studio and really similar to architectures that produce games. Incredible games with incredible story, with something that's, I don't know, for me to have to run with the fantasy, but in an incredible defined world. But gaming is different. If you search on trendings of YouTube in these months, you can find two games. Really different. You can find Among Us, developed by Emerson, and Fall Guys. Here you have the same condition of at the hand users, but you have a game. What I want to say. In this case, play is a melting of everything, and at the end, maybe we don't need, in general, better design. Game. But we need to find a way, as architecture before, to melt a lot of things together. One of these really important is the community. In this case, for example, last month there was incredible discussion about the crunch. in development studio. Of a lot of people stress about thousands hours per week to work. It's kind of burnout. They arrived burnout at the end. It is completely the same as architectural studio. But gaming in general is not so clear from this point of view. You can see by the community. The community creates at the end the success of the success of the game, and the game don't need probably completely only a better design of architecture. And so maybe I want to finish this presentation with saying what I don't know, video game can teach or to remember to architecture itself. That in general, with a series of tools really well designed in really well environment, with some defined system as the definition of the player, but has also a temporary autonomous zone with something defined rules that you need to follow. Maybe we can, as Brian said before, we can design new temporary vision to build new temporary vision for our future, and not only for design, but also for the community that already exists, and they are, I don't know, under lights of, one thing, capitalism, but in terms of human system, how you can manage in general the future in a better way. For example, here you have Rust. Rust is a really simple, with, I don't probably know why, not probably bad graphics, but in general, the gameplay told us that if you can create your better base, and you can survive better in our world. And so, thank you.
Thank you, Stefano. Thank you very much. Stop the screening. Yes, okay. So the presentation are done. And, it was very interesting. Thank you very much, Stefano. I'm sorry for the audio problem. We're trying to fix it. Unfortunately, the room doesn't really help a lot because there is a really huge echo, and we're trying to fix it in some way. But anyway, so starting the conversation among us, I'm really glad that we are here together to discuss about video game and architecture, because somehow one of the main topic of the pavilion is of course virtual reality, how the virtual reality and the physical reality can intersect. Of course, we are all we've been educated through video games. Because me, Stefano, Alessio, and I think also Ryan, we are all basically the same age. And we are all we have experienced the rise and the down platform game like Super Mario and Zelda, all the games that Ryan was mentioning before. So, but what is actually very new today is the focus that architecture is directed to video games. Because somehow it's probably kind of novel. It's a novelty that architecture is looking to video game and trying to make a discussion about it. So I'm wondering, and I'm asking to all of you, why you started to explore the realm of video game, and if you're exploring that through an architecture's perspective. So maybe Ryan can start to answer.
Sure. I think it became clear, like I mentioned briefly, but architecture, for me, architecture takes itself too seriously at times, and I think that that as we looked at the digital in architecture, right? Our first real foray into the digital. It was about sort of what we could model, what we could, how we could use digital tools to make maybe novel forms or novel spaces, but thinking about the site of architecture or the locations inside of video games as culturally relevant spaces was not something that we considered, and so, or that we widely considered as a discipline. And I think that, you know, my intention is twofold, I guess, because I think these spaces inside of games have developed wildly faster than we were able to form any kind of critical conversation about them, right? I mean, and so there aren't really a set of resources, or there isn't really a body of knowledge about like how do we critique the spaces of architecture inside of video games? How do we maybe address what they could be telling us or teaching us, or how we can learn from them or use them to learn or to have fun or to play? Because I think I totally agree. I mean, they're outlets for a lot of people to play and just enjoy maybe life as a different life inside of a different avatar, and in that way, we need to make sure we're being critical of the way that they can empower things, or you know, how the games may be a function of society as a whole, or our social conditions as a whole, and if so, what we can read about our social life or our social conditions from how people want to play video games. And so these are just all, I think, important conversations that need to be had. And I think as architects, if we looked a little bit at the world, we would see that we are sorely needed in these conversations, to have them outside of architecture and inside of the kind of the playful world as a whole, and be able to kind of lead in that discussion, if in my mind. So that's kind of where I'm at with that.
And maybe Stefano, do you want to say some things about?
No, maybe from a point of view, the interesting.
What I find interesting in terms of video games, not properly the video game itself, but is a sort of community that grows to a different platform and different environment related to a play, to a sort of
it transform play as kind of experimental social experiment, world social experiment, and this is because at the end we need every time to find this kind of place and find this kind of experience, if you want to say it like this. And so this is because the community itself of gaming is really, really interesting. As community of gaming, there's a huge amount of community also in real life, and also now gamer community, it becomes not digital but physical, when you have fairs, when you have everything, but it's not terms physical, digital, it's a community that are on the background, at the end, a game and a particular specific and temporary environment. This is what I find interesting to investigate in general.
Okay, Alessio, do you have anything to say about?
Sure. Yeah, I think that, like, trying to interpolating the two comments from Ryan and Stefano, I believe that, like, architects and designers right now, generally, all the environment that we have at school and work really gave us a lot of skills digitally in terms of learning new softwares. And like as Ryan said before, like, architecture take itself too seriously is probably the best line so far, because I believe that we really sometimes really overcomplicate some processes, and we don't think in terms of solutions, but we think in terms of process. That is not completely wrong. Don't get me wrong what I'm saying. I think that the depth that there is in a process of design is totally a valuable aspect of the work. What I see around the architecture community is that people do much more with less. And I am inspired by environments like game design and other things of this kind, because I can see that with the same sort of skills we have, they come up with a totally new system environment. They start to setting rules, and we do, but a very abstract level. We don't look for any demonstration of it. We just look for a concept. And I think that game design is a little bit more, at least from a point of view of process toward the real design that then will be eventually built in the future. I think game design is completing the process. The way a game design thing or a game design build and develops, it really completes the way we are thinking as designers. And that's not a case that that in the last years, augmented and virtual reality took over on any sort of design process, like in competitions. Like game engine are always more used to represent architecture. Unity and Unreal made collaborations with architecture firms on a daily basis right now, and they are pushing it on the industry a lot. And that really is born from game design. Like these companies were game software basically, and they are just like pivoting their products on more enterprises, and that's very interesting to me. And we cannot pretend that this is not happening. You know, like we really need to be involved, and we need to be significant. We need to be relevant, and we need to shape our work based on what society now is kind of requiring, I have to say.
Thank you, Alessio. And but it's curious that you're speaking about this intersection between architecture and gaming from a game designer point of view. Since you actually, if I'm not wrong, studied at Politecnico, then you moved to LA to study at SciArc and so on. So I'm wondering, since you and Ryan share a similar path, you are a former alumnus of SciArc. I mean, I'm kind of wondering what's going on there, like. Because when I think about SciArc, I'm simultaneously attracted and a little bit confused by the output of this academia, and so like I'm asking to both of you if you can share with us some of the experience that you have at SciArc, and if you can put some lights on the process that is taught at SciArc.
I think that it's one of the reasons why I was attracted to the institution is because it uniquely recognizes its position. In my mind, there's a clear sort of divergence of ideas for what architects should do in institutions, and most schools believe that architects should be educated to build buildings, and I would agree. And I think that there are some schools, some programs in some schools, but especially at SciArc, who believe that architecture should be taught as a way of thinking about the world and as a means to maybe achieve certain spatial outcomes, or build buildings, but also change the role of the architect in a way, or educate the architect to be somebody more interested in the broader implications of space and culture. And I would suggest, thinking of the new, modes of research and production that are validated by that institution is also really important. So I also want to hit on the last discussion, which was about for me, Alessio, one of the things that made your thesis so incredible was it used the gaming engines to interact with the physical world. Now, I for one, as a theorist, I don't differentiate between physical and digital space. Like that's something I've made in I will say 100%. But I do think it's interesting how the physical space is being affected by current digital spaces and will only be further affected. And I'm thinking back to my first arrival in LA was the summer that Pokemon Go hit, and like the cafes that had a Pokestop were doing very very different types of businesses than the cafes who you couldn't have a beer and sit at a Pokestop, right? But Alessio's work at SciArc, and we crossed paths there, was about that, changing the physical with that sort of digital space. So that's something that I
Hey everyone, it's Scav. I kind of wanted to give you a little
talk about to Alessio, please.
Sure. To go back for the very first question, I think that SciArc generally is an environment which gives you, let's say, a lot of freedom in terms of expression, especially thinking about the master program. Not probably the same, the undergrad program that gives you a little bit more structure, and that totally makes sense, you know. But like at least at the master, I had the chance to work with professors like Devin Weiser or Peter Testa, which are some of the, let's say, pioneers of technology in architecture, and they are really interested in any new investigation regarding technology into the design field. So it's been like a series of circumstances for me that I really tried to bring my passion of video games, augmented reality, and virtual reality inside of my program at school. And like Ryan mentioned, I really tried to make it work in a way that is highly relevant for the design community. I really didn't want to just do a concept. My main goal during thesis was building a whole application and framework. It was totally super ambitious goal that we really struggled to get in the end, because time is really limited during thesis. But like at least it like really drove me until here, and I have a lot of for my work that I do at Morphosis is really a lot informed from what I did in thesis. But staying what Ryan said, I think it's really important, like creating some sort of way to use what we build. So Pokemon Go, it's been one of the most successful AR application because it's like location based. So it's like it's kind of interlacing what you see on the phone with the physical space, gives you a reason to go out, gives you a reason to look for information. It's really like a new world on top of our world. And I think that's super successful. It's also interlaced by the concept of Pokemon that was already very successful previously, the AR game. So people can relate very easily. But what they did, and probably what he's trying to do, what now most of the tech companies, Facebook is trying to do the same with this concept of real world index in their new prototype for the AR wearables. Everyone is trying to create their own urban plan on top of our world. And this is really like no joke. It's like urban planning, honestly. And urban planning is a discipline that is born from architecture, or it's been developed through architecture. I'm not sure that it's born from architecture, but it's considered part of the architecture field. And this digital environment really are depending on location, and they will depend always more on location and businesses. So it's totally relevant looking to these technologies more and more with time.
Thank you very much for your answer. And I think probably I should go to SciArc to explore a little bit more.
You're doing good advertisement.
It's a good advertisement. I mean, it looks a little bit like the commercial that Ryan showed us before about the
product place.
studies in school.
The sort of product place.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm kind of wondering because you talk about Pokemon Go and how it reflects or somehow has an impact on or might have an impact on urban planning. And this is very interesting to me because I always thought about video games as a sort of environment where the designer not only designed the two-dimensional feature of the space, but gives also rules about physics, you know, like, and somehow a game designer is able to design an entire world and force the user to behave according to designed rules, no? And this is something that I can see in many of Stefano's project, of Parasite project. I know that you didn't want to talk about the rights project.
No, but it's good. It's good.
No, but I would put this on the table because, like, somehow in Parasite's project, media culture is explored from an aesthetical point of view, no? But it's not just about shapes and like the beauty that comes out from it, but also is about all the lateral consequences of the media. So you talk about politics of memes, as Ryan does. You talk about many other kind of aspects that are related to it, and I'm kind of wondering if you, Parasite, would like to join game designing at a certain point, or maybe if you feel that somehow game design environment represents the perfect environment for a designer, because you can decide basically everything, no?
Yeah, I think it's also interesting to design everything, but what we try to do in general is to shift the role of architect, because we are architect, from I don't know, the modernity definition of architect as I don't know, a god that want to they can create a complete environment, and I think it's really bad. It was really bad for us and for our city, this vision. And also this, maybe in game design, this is more easier because you are like a god. Yeah. But from the base of the project of game designer, there's play and there's someone that need to play to your game at the end. And this is kind of, is not living. This is is what is important. It's not living, it's another things. It's kind of, I don't know, suspended time, suspended space, but you are in these things. And so, in general, what is interesting in this is how we can create, also in gaming, tools to permit to the people to avoid rules, or to avoid rules, but inside rules. It's a strange sort of overlapping of concept. Also, the hand is the born of how, for example, Minecraft is born. Why? Yes. Why this block games is incredible, popular until now? Also because they open at the end, they create an open system, they put the people inside a particular world, and also without gravity, for example. It's possible that there's no gravity, but it gives a well-studied rules where you can be free to create a different, I don't know, version or a different vision of the society. They don't propose you a vision of society. So it's not a kind of storytelling games where you need to follow a story, and then is more, that kind of game is more related to movies. I don't know. That's the interaction. It comes, I don't know, a little bit, I don't know, less importance. Imagine, I don't know, can I have an example? Detroit Become Human. It's sort of book, it's a story. You can interact, but not at all. So it's incredible game, but it's not properly what the power of play in the game and the game design itself can do. Yeah. And so it's a media, and if you use the completely power of the media, you can reflect on a really deep concept, more really rated on the reality. Because, for example, Pokemon Go, everyone is incredible example because arrive under the light of the public, and everyone was shocked about the interaction of this game in terms of play. But if you're looking for, I don't know, access that came before, also only a small communities knows that still happen, this game. So there's a sort of, I don't know, importance of shifting the tools of game design and tools also of architecture to understand how I use these tools, how I can manage something different.
Maybe I can maybe add some reflection on this, some thoughts on this topic. I think what you are kind of trying to say, and that what somehow it's kind of interesting in some of your work, is that you base your design sometimes on deletion rather than addition, no? So in game, for instance, let's take Minecraft again. Like you said, like that has been designed according to some simplified physics rules, and in some cases they took out some physics rules, like for instance gravity. No? So taking out and deleting rather than adding creates some void of freedom, you know. And in this case, the player can act according to what they want to do, no? And it's interesting because somehow it replicates a sort of political model, no? So I will arrive to the next topic, which is if politics can be expressed through architecture, probably it can be even more expressed through video game, no? So I think somehow some of this is kind of very evident in some of the video that Ryan showed previously in the takeover, because Ryan started a very successful YouTube channel which explored the intersection between video game and architecture and gives interpretation through the architectural point of view. And I think Ryan, you did very well with Halo. Because somehow Halo, I mean, you kind of interpret Halo from a neoliberal point of view, no? So the individualism behind Halo and how it is expressed through the main character of Halo. And I'm wondering, so I will ask to everybody, like, can video game express a political ideology? And if so, is there any leftist video game around, or it's just neoliberal market?
Maybe. I think
You can.
I think no,
The bomb,
but I think there's a huge indie community all around the world that use I think this modality. For example, here in Italy, there's a developer house. It's called La Molla Industria, that relies completely the connection between video games and also politics, but also specific politics. You realize the video game for McDonald's, but fake, and or realize a lot of things. My answer is game design is a tool.
Okay.
As architecture is a tool. Architecture can be a gun. Also, a weapon. Game design can be a weapon.
So, Ryan, especially according to you, what's your opinion on it?
It's such a good question. I mean, I think the thing that does surprise me when looking at video games is that I think that they absolutely hold political content. As they can exist, you know, as you can maybe create in GTA, you know, recreate a fantasy of something that you would never do in real life. But you know, these kinds of simulations at least start to overlap our world. But I think, you know, hidden political ideology is something that I'm, you know, interested in uncovering, like especially for me, political ideologies that pretend to be neutral spaces that aren't really neutral spaces. But video games have existed for a while as a medium where people who experience all types of personal identities can exist as other identities or forget that their identity is persecuted in the world that they live in, and play as a character whose identity is the main character of that story, right? And there's a lot of there's a few things that come to mind, but as far as like a leftist video game, I kind of think Fall Guys, in a way, has opens up territory about like truly equal kind of starting points. Like nobody gets any sort of power-ups, or everybody can jump the exact same height. Everybody can like it's a very truly even level. And I think that's interesting. I mean, and also that your ability to succeed also relies on your ability to help others, or like engage with other people to make yourself more successful, right? I'm thinking of like the big like way, the way that the different systems work in the game, right? You kind of have to follow the crowd or go against the crowd. And I'm certain that there's a lot more out there. Some people actually, I think they talk about the Metal Gear Solid series. But I would leave that up to some research and crowdsourcing, I'm sure.
Please share the results with us.
Sure.
And Alessio, what's I mean, do you have any suggestion, like a sort of communist video game coming directly from the USS?
More than taking an orientation, that is always like a tough thing for everyone, I guess, when it comes to like talking ideas. But I really kind of appreciate the question. So there are games that are making definitely a change. In my opinion, one of the most prominent that for my personal experience, I know, it's the Everything by David O'Reilly. The one that like you are basically you can be everything. Like that's the main point of the game. I don't know if you know this game. Like it's very famous, been very popular. Most of it for the way that the game is framed. It is outside of the very first person view that usually we are familiar with when we talk about games. I think the games are very political in the way they are framed, inevitably. Like it's impossible making a not political video game as it's impossible to make a not political architecture project. Like you need to make choices, you have like pros and cons, and the balance between what you can do and what you can't do, it really determines how your project is going to be taken from the critics and everything. But there is something good that is happening right now in video games, which is definitely the tendency to open more to multiplayer social spaces. So no longer really about you as a solo adventure, but really you with others. You can, and that could become good and can become very bad, right? Like we see a lot of healthy competition where there are collaborative games and where you have like collaborative digital spaces. Then you have like I don't know, VR chat, and you have harassing between digital avatar, and like there are a lot. It's very hard to define, and I think that right now the major tech companies are trying to define their role, like they're really like their kind of legislation for it, right? We saw it with the new Oculus 2, which allows you to use it only with a Facebook account, for example. That is probably one of the biggest news in tech right now, and it's like a topic that is going over and over. Is it fair? Is it not fair? Who knows? Like there are people that keep buying the Oculus Quest, so that might be saying something that people want to go in that environment. Or like there are games, like you say, Fall Guys and other games that are very fun, and it's like bringing like more of a very healthy way to collaborate together. and it's very constructive in a way. Like it's not really about your own self, but it's more about collaborating with people for accomplishing something. So I think we're definitely going in a better direction thanks to the multiplayer capacity that right now is available, that was not available in the past as much as now. Definitely the game designer needs to make a lot of decision, and politically speaking, there is a high risk that the games are political, you know, and eventually in the future social spaces might be political too.
Yeah, I mean, I also want to say, like, that's so great, Alessio. Like capitalist ideology is like thoroughly embedded into video games. Like it's been there since day one in the idea of like collecting coins as a way to collecting coins in some kind of crazy currency as a way to keep people putting coins in the game, right? But I think that there's something can be read about culture's preferred method of like culture's preferred method of being built as something that's free time and play. And I think things like Minecraft are unsettling to me for one reason, because they're imbued with things like mining the earth and getting material and gaining resources that I think has layers of meaning that takes gives the player just a new way to be like a capitalist in a lot of ways, but it also represents people's willingness to spend insane amounts of free time to create something beautiful for the sake of it, right? Without sort of monetizing their hobbies, and then we find people doing that anyway. So I'm constantly, I think there's constantly readings of political ideology or consequences for different types of behaviors inside the games that we need to be paying attention to.
Yeah, and I think it is the same at the end completely with architecture. So I don't know. You have I don't know, sort of monuments of the contemporary architecture. There are, you know, banks, skyscraper, but you have also projects really small that are really full of I don't know, concepts and full of vision of the future. And then but all these, I don't know, buildings and game, for example, are in the same environment. And for sure, I completely agree that if you realize something in general, every kind of things, activity you are going to do is in a sort of way political. So you can be, for example, we are using a Zoom, for example, it can be also political. As in a game, I don't know, you can do that. In general, from the base, from the beginning, if you approach, I don't know, a media in a certain way, I don't know, you can express from a different people, a different community, maybe in the game world, in more shared way. Also, because you are playing, you're not living, and then
No, you're actually acting. So,
acting something.
like, I actually have like some more topic to discuss about, but I don't know, Mattia can. Ryan, we have like a 1 hour from now before Ternary close. So if you want, we can keep on going with the conversation, which is, by the way, super interesting, and I could go on for like the entire night. But I don't want to steal time to your presentation, and I'm looking forward to see the work of your students. So maybe we can close the conversation here. And maybe we can do a round 2 at a certain point, like if you guys like. I don't think that you're
Sure, I can keep going for as long as I could go all day. Yeah, I think this is a great conversation. I really appreciate getting to know you and your work a little bit, Stefano, as well.
Me too.
I appreciate your research and everything you've added. So. Yeah, I think it would be fun. I mean, I'm on no sort of time, but if it's okay to show the studio work now.
Yeah, it would be great. Me and Stefano
Sure.
are looking forward, and Mattia also are looking forward to see the project. And
Okay.
and we're very curious.
Yeah. So please.
Oh, okay. Okay, sure. Yeah, I'll just need the host.
Yeah.
Okay. I
Um,
think it's better to.
Yeah, maybe we can move around.
We'll remove product placement.
um, I can start talking about it a little bit. I mean, I think that I'm teaching a second year undergraduate studio at Kent State. Mm. And part of what we're learning, or part of what we're doing, is just learning how to draw architecture, thinking about space as a narrative condition, right? So I'm focusing on thinking about what from video games I can teach architecture students, right? And at its most basic level, I think one of the things that video games do really well is create narrative spatial experiences. And narrative spatial experiences means that the eye of the player is moving through space, the characters moving through that space, and that space is, as a sequence, is sort of teaching us how to behave, how fast to go, where to look. Maybe it might give us a hint at the space that we're going to see, by giving us a small peek at where we're going, right? At the end. That's something that architecture has been doing for some time, since forever, right? Since the Greeks planned the way that and even more places. But a city would be created so that you could see certain moments from other moments, right? Those areas of connection and vision were so important, and so you see video games duplicate these ideas, and I think play with them in the way that they create spatial sequences. Do I have the screen share? Oh, great. And so I wanted to share a little bit. Is this okay? Great. So instead of having my students break down, the Villa Savoie for the 100,000th time, I thought we could model the spaces and draw the spaces inside of different video games as a sequence. And so I had the students. I was really scared to do this, but I let them choose the games. And so we have Fall Guys, Mario Galaxy, Spyro, Undertale, Crash Bandicoot, Monument Valley, and Rainbow Six Siege as the games that were chosen. And so these games represent different ways of planning a sequence, and different ways of interacting with a sequenced environment. Let me think here. Rainbow Six is a very unique game. So my students started by modeling levels from the game, and modeling and drawing those levels, and thinking about them as a sequence and how the space shifts around you. And here is an example from Monument Valley, a game that I love, that you're probably familiar with, where gravity and there's so many lessons inside of Monument Valley about gravity and the way that you can see, and the way that your perspective on an axonometric or isometric view can shift and be played with, be messed around with. So this is actually a cut, a jogged section of one level of Monument Valley. This is a jogged section of Rainbow Six Siege, where you actually interact with the space, and different walls inside of the house can be blown up and exploded, right? Here's a great example in my Crash Bandicoot group. This group could not find maps, so they actually had to watch Crash Bandicoot run-through videos and then draw them out. So this is a kind of, I think a really cool, like manually have to sketch the space, and like they actually counted steps and paces of Crash and then had to figure out how tall Crash Bandicoot is in real life and then use the feet, like, and then convert it to feet and inches to build this in Rhino. So this is that Crash Bandicoot level as a Rhino level. And as a section and a plan. Oh wait, that's a different assignment. I'll get to that in a second. We also had a group do Undertale, and Undertale is almost like an old Zelda game where something like a house will appear from the outside, but that house will have an impossible interior. So they had to kind of figure out and draw the impossible interior layout. You can see the house kind of ends up being more like a shotgun plan to it, which I think is really interesting. Spyro is a proto open world game where you kind of have a looping system, and so drawing and figuring out how to create a kind of infinite looped architectural system became the challenge here for the Spyro group, and how showing that in section and plan would work. But you start in one location, you move in what ends up what feels like a linear traveling game is actually a looped game. Mario Galaxy was a really unique game because it is literally a collection of small planets as your space that you inhabit, and you don't have gravity. So that became a real challenge to figure out how to draw. So you can see they kind of drooped this kind of lazy string around to show the spatial sequence. And then they did try, create a section around that spatial sequence to describe how it feels to go about this game. And then Fall Guys group created a section and plan of the entire environment as you would experience it in the game as well. And I think their game as a sequence is really unique in that it presents different challenges. So the students were able to, and this I'm also talking about this presentation. This presentation is also about pedagogy, right? Like how young architects might engage space and think about the spaces inside of a game and learn from that to ultimately create new architecture. So their next assignment as a group was to take those sequences and then restructure those sequences to create a new level, which formed a different organization of the game, right? And so the Fall Guys group created this amazing axon. They essentially took the organization of a very linear level system and created an infinite looped game. And they took the language of the game and built, and here's their section, and here's a plan of that new level of game. And so there's a new spatial sequence inside of that game. For Mario Galaxy, they were interested in sort of smashing together and combining different level types. And so this is the Sweet Galaxy, and I forget the name of the other one. They'll kick me later. But here's these beautiful, when you give architecture the opportunity to create these different worlds, you get these incredibly interesting sections and plans that start to describe space and our relationship of body to space in a very different way. So it's not only a teaching tool to discover like how to draw space, which has its own challenges, as you know, because of the infinite game systems. We try to draw architecture with different with different bounds, maybe a bounds of that system being the building, whereas architecture inside of games has very different types of boundaries. So how to represent those boundaries and draw it as architecture kind of created these really interesting overlaps. So this is of course the Spyro, and they organize their level in just like still not still more of an open world thing, but like multiple open worlds kind of clashing. This is the Undertale group, which I think did a beautiful job on their Axon, creating this totally new floating world out of different pieces of the other level with different levels and new or interesting sectional relationships in how those spaces form. So like literally breaking down a very 2D, a two-dimensional game into making it 3D, and then abstracting those spaces as to what they might look like, and then actually measuring out those spaces as a pedagogical exercise to learn about architecture and how we draw. So finally, the last few groups, the Spyro group. Excuse me, I'm sorry. This is the this is the Crash group. Also created their own level, but instead of a linear system, they tried to mess around with thinking about shortcuts and different ways of inhabiting a level as design of the level would allow you to inhabit different spaces and create gaps and ways of seeing that would signal these shortcuts to exist. And I think in the creation of that new level and the way that to draw the actual section became really challenging. The Monument Valley group here basically created a mashup of many different stylistic agendas inside of that game, and kind of threw them together into this beautiful kind of plan and section of this game, and another new level. And then the speculation on behalf of the Rainbow Six group was, what if we created a level that was just about the interior of these spaces that you experience, and then what would that outside look like, and how would we clad it? And they made this kind of absolutely insane suburban home that was, had all these holes in it and many levels and ups and downs, and this is the kind of section that they ended up with. Very cool. You could combine and recombine this game into many different things. But the where we're at now as a group, and where we're at now as a group is to break games down based on their on their aesthetic categories and how you might extract volume and shape from the game and learn from it and play with that. So we actually just modeled objects and obstacles and follies from the game, and then created a mashup process ourselves, where we are creating new aesthetic objects that kind of mirror or learn from the aesthetic objects of the game, but ultimately attempt to create their own types of volumes and types of spaces. And we're basically, the challenge here next is to create a media center out of these results. So you can see a lot of the Rainbow Six Siege language in this one. This one was Undertale, and so there's a lot of like in this one there's a lot of maybe like 16-bit objects, right? So there's a lot of pixelization going on. There's this kind of column here, and so you start to notice when you look at these shapes, they aren't just sort of they're kind of a new type of maybe, or a new take or a different take on what Euclidean geometry might look like, or how to take from architecture and make new architecture. Instead of taking from architecture, we're actually taking from different spaces of different games and recreating those objects to create new volumetric exercises. So what happens next is, they have to make this into a building, a media house, and they'll get a site and a very real building project starting this afternoon, actually. So that's where we're at now. So Many thanks to Daniel Saunick, Emily Hovis, Matt Nice, James Fisher, Evan Wyke, Jamil Conley, Nick Gattosi, Andrew McIntyre, Savannah Morris, Ryan Forte, Jordan Haywood, David Slynn, and Cole Sukis for all their hard work, and Chi Lu, who was ill this week and could not make it, so I hope she starts feeling better. But thanks. Yeah, so that's what we're up to in the studio.
Thank you, thank you, Ryan. I can just say one word. It's wow. Like it's incredible. Like an incredible words from your students, and I'm very surprised by the quality and the how your process is rooted to reality actually. Because somehow like you started like analyzing video games, and then at the end of all you're producing an architectural design, and this is sounds like the process of game design in reverse. So like the project is informed by game design, but it's architectural project at the end of all. And plus, if I can say some things about the perspective point of view that you're using at the beginning of the analysis. So you're kind of taking many of platform games like Crash Bandicoot, for instance, that are like first person, but you're analyzing it from an orthogonal point of view, or from Axon, like using the words of Peter Eisenman, like a sort of divine point of view, like coming from God, you know, like from the top. And this is great because we all grow up with Crash Bandicoot, but we never actually thought like how is made the level, like which shape has the level, like and somehow the project that comes out becomes like a sort of mega structure that you are kind of analyzing, and like, yeah, for instance, the one that is in the screen, and analyzing from an architectural point of view, like providing plan, section, and elevation. And I think it's great. Like it's a sort of design process that is not directly linked to shape design. If I'm not wrong, no? Like you're starting analyzing the path of the user, and then at the end of all, you're like producing a project. I'm very surprised, and I cannot say anything wrong about it. Like, and thank to you and thank to your students. I don't know if Alessio is still online. No, maybe no. And
Yeah.
Stefano, do you want to say something or?
Sorry, I was on mute. I love the work. Congratulations, Ryan, for the showcase. I love it. I can say something regarding like game design, and generally since I have a background in architecture, I really understand kind of like the effort in the translation between what can be designed and game design, and I really understand where this class is going. There are certain limitations when you deal in designing like a new world for a game, and one of the most let's say prominent that you need to take into account when you start to design something is the fact that when we're dealing with games, we are living with performance and limitations. And unfortunately, that's a very technical aspect, but it really affects how you think and how you're going to be designing them, especially when you have like a video game that is targeting a console, like it could be the phone or Nintendo DS or anything that is like a small performance device. You really think in terms of design, but also like how big can be this world, or how actually can this world being built in a way that is sort of modular, but it doesn't look modular. What does it mean having like a Boolean process for forming a geometry versus an additive process that might be actually having blocks that resemble a Boolean maybe in the end, but it's not really Boolean. I think all of those things are very important to take in consideration when you build world. I think the analysis of the games is absolutely amazing because it really makes you understand how when someone design games, it's more about the experience than the final shape, right? It's not like a very formalist exercise, but it's really more about the experience inside of the game. It's like an experiential design almost. And what happens often is that at least from my experience is that like I wanted to make like a very pretty drawing or maybe very nice model for my virtual experience, and then it turns out that like you go into the game engine and turns out you can do that in a total different way and with a much better performance and a lot of other things. So I think this exercise is absolutely needed to have like clear ideas before to start to eventually design a game. But also here, the final output is still considered architecture. So I think that the information from video games is super valuable, and it could lead to many different outputs. The only thing that I want to stress a little bit on, and it kind of relate with what we talked about in the meeting, is that really like when you start to design video games, the design is really influenced and affected by how much scalable you want your design to be. Like how big this world is going to be expanding. Do you want expanding? Why you want to expand it? What are the rules in this world? Where you can go? Can you climb the wall? No. Can you do it? Can you go through bridges? Can you jump from like all of this consideration are so many that it takes a while to process. That's why making games takes so long, because you need to consider one thing, but then other 10 things jump on behind it, and then you see that something works better, and then you go completely back. And but I think this is amazing, and maybe having some experiential point of view would be maybe a good addition in a further development of the studio or anything that goes with it.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much. Yeah, it's like I'm constantly well, at least for this at this stage, I'm like considering like what my responsibilities are to the students, as far as the fact that like I have to teach them architecture, right?
Right.
At the level where the studio is at, and so it's like how soon can we, where can we? And I say this more like personally, like when can it be completely divorced, or like how, do I want them just like, hey, design a game, or should we like, right? That's, I guess, what makes it architectural research, right? The fact that we do in the end try to maybe make a building out of it.
Yeah,
awesome.
I think so. Yeah. So maybe like the information from video games is totally like the fact that you said in the beginning that this young designer are designing digital space and taking as an example, not really like the modernist architecture like we've been taught, but like this kind of unseen modern spaces. To me, it's amazing, because if you just think about Fortnite, the fact that you're building these castles, right? You're building this castle, meanwhile you're playing, and you go up and up and up, but you rarely see it like from a far distance. And I'm always been, when the few times I played, I was really interested like in seeing what I was making instead of actually making stuff. So I was jumping out and just taking a look at it.
Then you get shot or something.
Right, and then I get shot and lose the game because nobody cares about it. It's not the point of the game. But that makes you understand kind of where we look at designers, and where maybe like a person which doesn't have a similar background is more interested into. So I think that the balance between these 2 points of view are very challenging to find.
Yeah, thank you.
For example, the project of Crash Bandicoot remained in my mind a project of this artist. Maybe is Aram Batrol. Was not this project is not a build. He want to realize in a physical world the Counter-Strike map with the same texture on that. And I think it is kind of there's this contradiction between how you can design a game for the player, and now you can design the hand architecture. But the Alessio questions of how I can jump there, I can arrive there from this door. So at the end, is the base was in general the base of architecture, how you can design good space for people. But maybe sometimes we forget for different reasons. So we add blocks in architecture already done, and you say, okay, perfect, we have a standard, and maybe game designer can remember us that there's no standard. At the end, there's only a sensation. Then can you feel in a space? Also because there you not have rules, but also in a reality. At the end, you can have a different rules and a different modality of how you can live a space, and especially live a space together with the peoples. Maybe this is the point of also the project. A lot of project that you should has. Is good. Thank you for sharing us.
Thank you very much to
Oh
all.
yeah, awesome comments. Thank you so much. You're all invited to our final review. So.
Thank you, Ryan.
I'll send you an email.
Yeah, that's great. And of course, we will follow you on your YouTube channel and on your Twitch now.
Thank you.
It's going to be very nice to hear your development. And I think we should close now, no, Mattia? What do you think? It has really super nice to talk about video game. It has been very nice to talk about video game in architecture, and I would like to thank you, Triennale, for letting us to do this conversation, and also the Tbilisi Architecture Biennale, which is, by the way, the main supporting institution of this panel of event, and that also allow us to do and support us in the construction of another pavilion in Tbilisi, where the conversation would be streamed. So, guys, hope to see you soon somewhere else, and Ryan and Alessio, maybe we can organize a round two at a certain point. Or meeting in a game, yeah. Which is
really nice to
a
be here.
question that I haven't asked. I mean, I haven't asked a question. Do you guys play often? Like, where can we meet? What games are you playing at the moment?
It's a strange question also because Epic Store with the fighting of Apple,
Yeah.
give for free a lot of games. So I have Hitman, I have all the Watch Dogs 2. I have too much games to play. There's Legion if you want to meet in Legion now.
But anyway, yeah. So thank you very much, and I really enjoyed to speak with you, and I hope like also the people on Twitch probably enjoyed. They interact very a lot, and so we're very happy. Thank you very much, Alessio. Thank you, Ryan. Bye bye.
Thanks to you guys.
Thanks,
Thanks to
everybody.
everyone. Thank you. Amazing work.
It was
Congratulations.
great. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Good to see you, Alessio. See you, everybody.
See you. Bye.
Ciao. Ciao.